Good afternoon. It is afternoon, isn't it? We're in daylight.
It's beautiful.
We're in the UK. This is pretty...
beautiful outside. In fact, we should be doing this outside, mate.
Yeah, what are we doing in here? Albeit in a very lovely setting, of course, framed by the one and only Lloyd's building.
Centre of Innovation.
Centre of Innovation. Well, you're joining us today for, wherever you are, for another interview with insurance leaders from all around the world as part of our Beyond Boundary study, looking at how the world of innovation is evolving, and we're talking specifically to insurers about is like, how are they organising themselves, dealing with this evolving risk landscape that's happening all around us. What are your strategies looking like to deal with that? How are you organising your teams? What activities you're undertaking? So we're going to explore some of that. But probably before we start with any of that today, maybe we do some introductions.
If you want to.
The one and only Tom. Tom, perhaps if you could tell people, apart from your name being Tom, your job, what you do here at Chaucer.
At least you reminded me about that one.
Yeah, little prompt.
Thank you, and lovely to be talking to everyone today. I'm Tom Graham. I'm the Head of Innovation and Partnership at Chaucer. My background is an underwriter, so I've been an underwriter for more years than 25 years.
Well, it's a disclosure there already.
Yes, correct. You can probably tell anyway just by looking at my face. But of various lines of business, but mainly as a reinsurance underwriter. And then in my latest manifestation, since I've moved back from Singapore, where I've been living for a very long time, as the head of our new division within Chaucer, well, not that new anymore, but the Partnership and Innovation team.
Fantastic. Well, I'm torn. On the one hand, brilliant to have you in the UK, but you have left Singapore behind.
I'd say I'm physically in the UK. Mentally, I think we're still somewhere over the Middle East somewhere. Yeah, not quite there yet, but no, it's exciting.
Quite fully assimilated.
It's exciting to be back.
Okay, so that's interesting. So underwriter by trade, and somehow you found yourself into the murky world of innovation. How did that kind of partnerships? How did that come about?
I mean, the first thing I'd say is probably that's one of the signs that innovation is becoming such an accepted part of our business, is that you have dyed-in-the-wool underwriters now doing this innovation malarkey. So I think that's part of the story of the innovation change. Whereas 5 years ago, it was a little bit different to that, right? Now it's seen as much of a credible and permanent part of our business anyway at Chaucer. As any other line of business. It's just done in a little bit different way to perhaps existing P&Ls. But yeah, how did I drift into that? I guess like a lot of people and like most of my career, curiosity, I think, is the main thing, inquisitiveness. I like working on new things, I like building new businesses, I like watching clients, supporting them and watching them become the thing that they can be. And I suppose naturally, therefore, you drift into some of those newer areas of things, and I suppose that's where it comes from. I do have a mathematical and sort of engineering background, so I like the science as well as the art, and that often helps on some of this stuff because you're problem solving from multiple angles with not clear information, which is
as a refreshingly
and you do need to remind people of that. It's surprising the number of times you need to remind people that there isn't a right answer. Well, there isn't a right answer to any risk, otherwise you wouldn't need insurance. But there isn't a right answer to new risk, especially, and therefore you're making assumptions, you're making educated guesses, I suppose, about what is the right thing to do in a new risk area or a new client type or whatever. And so we'll talk about that, I'm sure, in terms of what we look for in insurtechs. But that kind of like acceptance that you don't have a perfect answer to this stuff is really key, and sometimes a bit of an anathema to a traditional underwriter who thinks, I'd argue that they don't, but who thinks they know the exact right price of a red car versus a green car.
Sure. Okay, well, I think that's, we haven't particularly rehearsed this, right, but that's a really good segue, I think, into, well, how's innovation set up at Chaucer? Because I immediately hear that and think, okay, well, there's something structural, cultural within the business that's enabling, giving you that latitude to operate. So, how are you set up, and maybe we can expand on that cultural piece as well.
Sure, and not obviously the way we do it at Chaucer is not the best way or the perfect way to do it, but it fits with us culturally. we're a company driven by culture, and I generally mean that. I mean, like, you'll hear that word banded around everywhere. So it's got within our business. So it's got to work within the culture of our company. There is no round pegs into square holes sort of attitude within here. And innovation is much the same. This was a journey started 5 years ago, 6 years ago now. And we didn't know how it should properly fit in with the company. And as you know from working with us all those time, we originally started with any sensible person would do, which is kind of segment it and sit it over in one area, experiment and play around with it, because that's obviously important within the projects that we work on, but also really important within the organisation to try and work out how it should correctly fit. And honestly, it's a sign of success for Chaucer, and other companies, that this is now embedded within the underwriting function. So the innovation team, which, just to distinguish, is the team that works on innovation as a wider subject, but mainly around product insurance innovation rather than, say, SaaS or operational innovation, is now another underwriting cell. It's a very special underwriting cell, but it's another underwriting cell like any other line of business within the business. And that's where we've reached because we're so comfortable with what we do now as Chaucer. So that change sort of fully manifested itself this time last year, but has been gradually heading towards that direction for a while now. So we now have innovation as a product creation exercise within underwriting, which allows us to have underwriters with dedicated authority, et cetera, towards this enterprise of innovation underwriting. I would say, though, that, and we spend a lot of time on this, or the team spends a hell of a lot of time on this, which is to make sure that it's not just contained within the innovation team. I'd say 75% of the things that we're working on are with other teams within the business. Idea generation comes as much from other people and people like yourself as it does from the innovation underwriting teams. And they work with the marine team or the casualty team or whoever it is to help them on their sort of product changes as much as it is as an exercise on itself. And that's super important for us. In fact, over the last year, I'd say we've tried to shift our focus from more sort of complete greenfield markets into working with existing underwriting teams to work out how to innovate their product. And I'm sure that will shift back again at another point, but we've just tried to pivot a little bit more recently onto that side of the...
But either way, it sounds like it's much more growth focused than anything else.
I mean, look,
the optimization of an existing product or market.
Yeah, at the heart of this, we're a commercial organisation. You know, as much as I love doing this, we're not doing it.
This is a very nice office.
But we don't judge ourselves on a financial growth metric in innovation would be a fool's errand, right?
Yeah, talk to me a bit about that, because I think it touches on that kind of understanding of...
The funny way to put it is our underwriting team, the innovation underwriting team, have the hardest job in the world. Because if they do something successfully, it becomes business as normal and is no longer a project that they're working on any longer. So the kid learns to walk and goes off into the big wide world and they're not involved in it. So they are one of the few underwriting teams that, if they've been really successful, have no income because all of their projects have worked and they've all gone somewhere else. So that's so we do have we deliberately do not have a financial success measure in terms of an income number attached to the innovation piece. It's about how we support stuff. Now, obviously, we look at the profitability of deals and all of those kind of things that you would have in a normal good risk management and governance setting, but income does not drive us in terms of a financial measure. Of course, part of that product triage and assessment is there a market that is looking for this, like the classic problem-solution dichotomy. And the first question I'll always ask anyone is this a problem looking for a solution or a solution looking for a problem, right? So we're very driven by people who've got problems, not funky solutions for the sake of them.
Okay. And how does that translate into, you've touched on this a little bit, but how does that translate into the team skill sets and how you work with the business? You've intimated already, working closely with teams. I don't know if that translates into business units. How does that work?
Yeah, that's a good question, because it's really hard to get right within the innovation team itself.
Yeah, sure.
Because technically what you need is a bunch of people who've seen it all before, and usually those are your most experienced underwriters within the business, right? That's really hard to do, right? Who've seen all different lines of business. You can bring back all of those different things that they've learned and then help the younger, newest products of the generation with all their expertise. The reality is you can't do that. So you have a mixed set of skills within our team. Well, I'm the grey-haired underwriter who sort of has made their mistakes and lost money and sort of gone, no, please don't do that. We have someone, as you know, someone with a really technical sort of data science background who's gradually becoming more and more of an underwriter in the way that she's working. And then we have someone who joined the team more recently from that building over there who's coming with a great Rolodex of network and contacts within the wider innovation area to bring in those ideas, and we all work together. And then we, on any project we do, we then grab the most curious and inquisitive and best suited people from all different parts of the rest of our business, whether that's an operational part, a pricing part, a wordings part, a underwriting team, and again, that's embedded within this sort of group one Chaucer culture, as we call it.
Okay.
We're all working towards the same end, and we're all remunerated as a result of all of our economic activities. So there's no silos within our company, which is really nice to work on.
So it sounds like you've got your A-team style.
They're not the A-team. They're the facilitating team. They've done it all before. They know how to they know how to make the cake. Yeah. But they need the inspiration coming from all the people with new recipes and new ingredients to put in that cake.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think I was incorrectly using a metaphor. I was thinking more about, look, you've got a bunch of super capable people who are able to then work within an external ecosystem of the Rolodex and people they can find, and then internal stakeholders from within the business, depending on, I guess, the problem that you're trying to solve and the stage you're at in solving it. That's
spot on. I don't have anything to add to that.
Okay.
Spot on.
It's going on a LinkedIn profile sometime soon. So I read into that there's an evolution, but there's some maturing in that activity.
Externally and internally, right? I mean, there's a building over there full of a dedicated broking team who worked on that. Didn't exist on that 5 years ago, right? So I think it's been both. Yeah. And that's a sign of, I'm always wary of saying it, and mature, because it's a little bit ironic to say mature in innovation, but it is a sign of a more kind of BAU process within the industry now. I think we're particularly good at it, but we're not the only company, right? That this is now a bit more of an embedded part of it. So I mean, non-ironically, both the external internal environment has sort of grown up a little bit on all this stuff. I think what you've got to keep in the back of your head is that some of the time with innovation you are breaking things and rebuilding them, and so you shouldn't ever rest on your laurels, but also realise that this team has a role within creating something new, and that can be disruptive within an organisation, and obviously that disruption presents itself in different ways each time. But our team are, when one of our team walks around the desk, they're going to ask you something that you've never done before, right? That's now established, but they'll still ask you to do something new. Okay.
And could you describe a bit more about the kind of market conditions and this innovation growing up, or as a combination?
It's not just you asked me that question actually, because how do you describe market conditions in innovation when partly it's never been done before, so there is no market conditions?
Or maybe insurers' attitudes, partners that you're talking to or engaging with. From my perspective, there's like historic rhetoric in the market where it's, a bit them and us, or they don't understand what it takes to get a product into a fully fledged, launched insurance product, and you've got startups talking about how hard it is and what lack of understanding there is on a...
The glib answer is that bit hasn't changed, and that will always exist, right? Yeah. We will always be explaining to people... We'll always be explaining to people, for example, once we've launched a successful product, the first thing that's going to happen is that we'll change the product.
Yeah, sure.
And people think you'll get better at that at time, but no, there's always, there's always a thing that you build, and then a thing that you change it to, and then another thing that you change it to. So that is just part of the innovation cycle, I think, and that evaluation and evolvement. And again, going back to my previous point, when that evolving stops, or slows down or doesn't happen so much, is when you don't need the innovation team so much as you did in the past, because it's reached this level of maturity and grown-upness. Similarly, almost by definition, and there's not many groups who do this so regularly that it becomes muscle memory to them. The insurtechs say, for example, that you're working with, it's new to them.
Yep.
So you're going through, sometimes it feels like you're going through the same stages of teaching your kid how to walk, but with a different, with a different child sometimes. I don't mean to say that they're children, but it's that process
Sure.
of, they can be quite childlike in the insurance market. And so that
course,
process of teaching them what it is, say they're becoming a Lloyd's cover holder, that's rightfully so, quite an in-depth and complicated and detailed process.
Sure.
And if you've never done it before, you'll be flabbergasted the amount of paperwork that you have to fill in, right? But that is a necessary part of the process. So that bit hasn't changed. I suppose what's perhaps has changed is how many of these new ideas are coming to fruition at the moment. So I feel like, and maybe it's a perception that only I have, but I feel like some of the bigger challenges, themes, there's not new ones popping up all the time. So the themes around climate change, the themes around intangible assets, the themes around AI, those aren't new things. We don't have a new one of those coming along. So it's more about the evolution within those. But that's nothing to do with the insurance market, right? That's a wider market dynamic. There will be new stuff, but at the moment I feel like there isn't so much, oh my word, we've never thought about climate change before, eureka moments going on.
Have you heard about it?
Yeah, exactly. Apparently, it's a thing. There's less of that at the moment.
Okay. So is it more about people getting more comfortable with dealing with that, not the lack of understanding, but the lack of certainty around certainty around how to solve a problem, or the fact that, of course, if you're new to insurance, you won't understand these things, and a process will have to be gone through to...
And frankly, if it were that easy, you wouldn't need teams like ours, right?
Sure.
I'm not trying to talk us out of the job, but wouldn't it be great?
It's okay, we'll
the
edit
moment
this
you
bit
didn't
out.
need that, you didn't need that, right? So I think that's normal. I think perhaps where you're seeing changes are the application. So AI is the big one, right? And data, right? The application of how those things are impacting an organisation. Take out the actual, premium and risk that you're running.
Yep.
So how do you use more modern forms of data interpretation, of AI modelling, et cetera, within your process? Now that's obviously changing.
Sure.
And that's something that will bring really exciting new opportunities for the way that we go through our process. Mm-hmm. Perhaps not more so, and I'm very prepared to be challenged by people who understand this stuff better than I do, perhaps less so on like what is the right price or the right product for this new thing, because at the moment those models still need, especially AI models, will still need training on something, and if it's never existed before, it's quite hard to imagine what that thing might be. But the process by which you go through that is definitely adjusting. I think obviously more widely everyone knows that there's a sort of maybe more repressive attitude towards funding into some of these new companies than there was a couple of years ago. And because we're selective in what we take on, it hasn't really affected us. We're not trying to do 100 things reasonably well each year. We're trying to do a couple very well. So usually the best businesses are recognised as the best businesses by the underwriting community, investment community, et cetera, but I've certainly heard other people sort of talk more broadly around the sort of challenges in getting support for those models.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. And just expanding on that a little bit, do you think there's a uniqueness? I mean, we're opposite Lloyd's, right? Mm-hmm. So is there uniqueness to the approach or what you're seeing as being common good practice within Lloyd's market, or do you think that general good principles transcend and are applicable to everywhere?
I mean, yes. To answer your last question, whether everyone does them or not is another point, right?
Yeah.
Like,
but that's what I was saying.
Just because there's a good way to build a Lego tower doesn't mean everyone does it. Right?
Same with anything that's good for you, right? You don't necessarily do it.
To an extent, no. I think it's been relatively, the people who are very active in this space are relatively stable in terms of the people. Lloyd's look, if Lloyd's is not doing this kind of stuff well, then you would question what that building is required for, right? It's always been about the cutting edge or the riskier or the harder parts of insurance. You don't need Lloyd's for your motor insurance, you need Lloyd's for your AI insurance, right? That's what it's there to do. So you'd always hope it would be on the cutting edge of that. There are examples of other companies around the world, a couple in Europe, I think there's one or two in Australia, and then quite a few in the US who have been quite successful in their innovation journeys. I think where I would just distinguish the bit that we're a bit more familiar with to the bit that we're not, because we're not mass B2C companies, so I'm not that involved in, say, the personal lines development, all the rest of it. So I observe that from the sidelines as much. We're much more about the commercial insurance, the bigger risks, the more complex stuff. So no, I think it's in a good place at the moment in terms of its. I'd like to see a few more smart ideas coming along at the moment, but it's in a good place in terms of the way that we then onboard these ideas and give them the air that they need. And again, the Lloyd's Lab is a really, really good place for that. And I think Lloyd's are obviously trying to expand what the lab is capable of doing in terms of its resourcing and so forth, but it's been really a testament to their good design philosophies and the way that they've supported that business, that it's been great for anyone working in Lloyd's, which gives us a bit of an edge, I suppose. Yeah.
Okay. Well, again, like a very nice segue, I feel, into how the organization's set up, the context of the market. What about the more practical side of, hey, look, bringing great ideas into the business, striking new partnerships? What are the sort of learnings that you've gathered along the way, of which I'm sure we could spend weeks talking about, but what are some of the...
I'm not going to tell you the secret sauce on camera, am I? There's
without
quite a few things that there's some lessons that we've learned, and mostly, if I had to characterise them more generally, mostly around questions that we should always ask earlier in the process, or
that's interesting. Okay,
things that we should do earlier in the process that we've learned that don't necessarily need doing, but should be seeds planted in people's brains earlier. So that's one of the things that we now do much better than we did a few years ago.
With individual or disciplines in particular, or is it just forward managing expectations generally?
Expectation management is certainly helpful on this, but just once you've done it a few times, part of the process of becoming an expert in this stuff, right, is that it feels much more natural to you, and therefore
muscle memory.
It's a bit of muscle memory. It's a Roger Federer backhand sort of thing. And so that's becoming easier for us to do, because we can possibly spot potential errors earlier in this process, but also we've learnt now that things that, let's say in the second stage, the build-up stage, or after product launch stage, like if you just only address them 6 months earlier and started thinking about them 6 months earlier, it would make that next stage much quicker, even though you don't need the fully built Lego tower.
Sure.
It would be easier. So we're much better at that now. So I guess maybe broadly put, the commercialization of ideas we've become better at, because we know what roadblocks happens. And again, the problem is they're all different, right? All the different products and all the different companies you work with are all different. So they all present their unique challenges and unique opportunities. But asking that stuff earlier, even if it's just to start thinking about it, it has been one of the big things. I won't tell you what we asked, but, earlier, but that's one of the big things that we've done.
Start scribbling away. What about things that, I don't know, more hard learned, slow things down? Is it just the inverse, just not?
Firstly, failing in innovation is not a bad thing, right? Or not.
Well, that's interesting, right? Because sometimes it's perceived as, it is a real challenge, right?
I thought it would be a bigger problem. I thought there would be more I told you so's coming on from the bleachers. We've really not experienced that, and sadly, not everything that we've worked on. I say sadly, and I want everything to work well, but sadly not everything has worked well, and some of them have been shut down or redirected or whatever. So, but that's kind of within you. I mean, we all talk about that, right? So I won't repeat the whole fast fail thing, fail fast thing, and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
That is just part of what we do, right?
But it's come up. It's come up.
But I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
That's if everything.
That's life. You
to
just
take
wanna,
another sporting
yeah.
analogy, if you're skiing and you're not falling over, then you're not trying hard enough, right?
There we go.
So yeah, that stuff's okay. I guess things that have been more problematic. Distribution probably is the hardest one to pre-program or have some formula on what's going to work well with the intermediaries or with the clients. How do you hit their sales cycles properly and intelligently at the right time? How do you attract people's interest in this kind of stuff? And even products that have obvious, take AI, which is a massive thing on risk managers, finance, CFOs, risk landscape at the moment.
Yeah.
It's not like AI insurance is flying off the shelves and is a $10 billion class yet. It will be. It's probably a $100 billion class.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
But those sales cycles are quite hard to predict and quite hard to get right. And I suppose perhaps that's the way it should be, because the companies who do that best will be the ones that are most successful.
Yeah.
But we haven't found a way to create a systematic way of doing that yet.
Okay.
Yeah, that's always going to be. But sales is always a challenge, and that distribution is always a challenge.
Yeah, I think so. Also, I don't know, how can you define a recipe for something that's
Maybe
like
there
a
isn't
fixed one when things are changing so much or things are so different?
Yeah, maybe there isn't one.
Yeah,
maybe the lesson you learn is to learn that there isn't a completely correct route to market, if you want to think about it like that. Although the early, this isn't giving things away, spotting things early that are things that you think are great ideas, but that no one wants to put their hands in their pockets for is a really, really important one.
Being really clear, you've got a problem to solve.
Yeah, I think there's some really, and I will name check them because I know that he'll love being name checked, but I think what the Howden Ventures guys are doing with that, which we're a big supporter of, is an exciting change in the way that data-led innovation is coming into the insurance marketplace. We're working on some really interesting stuff on the reinsurance side with some NGOs and other aid organisations. That's quite innovative in terms of this is more about structuring and finance solutions for businesses, which is kind of interesting. I'm quite excited about that. It's not necessarily new risks, it's just a way to manage existing organisations' problems in a different way, and that's kind of exciting.
But that is interesting in context of, I don't know, it's always felt like innovation has been much more focused on the product and develop the product, get it to market.
Yeah, less on the reinsurance or the financing solution side. Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, there's a lot that goes on in that world that sort of doesn't sit solely within the insurance balance sheet, right? That, bankers are constantly coming up with new ways of spreading risk.
I say here this nicely contained.
Of
course, you just ship it. Great.
But yeah, I think that's quite exciting, and obviously volatility in general, entropy is increasing in our environment that we work in, right? Whether it's through climate or political risk or all that sort of stuff. So it may be that they're not new risks; they're just taking a heightened, rise up the risk management dashboard in companies' worries, and then you need to think about whether what you're offering now is suitable for what they need now. And that's to take out the commercial cycle bit, right? Is the PV rate correct? Is it too high? Is it too low? All that sort of stuff. No, it's about the changing volatilities that these businesses are and organisations are being exposed to now is definitely on the rise, and people want smart solutions on how to manage that. But then again, your access to better data, whether it's a large cargo vessel or a complex building or whatever, is becoming so much better, and the insurance market is, I think, slowly starting to tap into how to use that to help your clients manage risk better, to help you understand risk better, to charge the right price at a better and quicker. And then, perhaps maybe just mention it, but let's not stray into it because it's a whole other conversation. The rise of sort of the commoditization of the insurance market with the facilities and all that sort of stuff, which again maybe is out of scope of this, but that's changing as well, and thinking about how that's going to affect your business.
Okay. I don't know, can you touch on it briefly?
I mean, it is a big conversation, right?
Yeah.
Simply put, say the rise of the algo follow, the rise of the facilities market, whether those are brokers or other sort of facilities, is changing the way certain segments of the wholesale market and now the retail markets are being traded. And I think the analogy is very overdone to the big bang in the 80s that the banks went through, because insurance is a very, very different product to buying and selling a stock and share. But there are similarities in terms of the standardization of how these things are traded and the following market commoditization of that. That some companies have really grasped, and some companies are maybe a little bit more ostrich-like in terms of their acceptance of this stuff is happening whether you like it or not. It's ironic, right? For those of us that have a lot of grey hairs and worked in this market, some segments in the insurance market did this 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And so the fact that this is now coming on now is of no surprise to some of us, but yet still taking people by surprise. But that's not it's not a new risk, it's a new way of trading.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, there's a big old discussion around all of that, but I think it's a beautifully summarized introduction to probably a 6-part.
Yeah,
career,
right. And again, that's not an innovation project in inverted commas.
Okay.
In many ways, it's more of a market structural change, and different way of trading is happening within the market.
Okay. So I like this. There's all these beautiful segues coming in, and thinking about the future. What something that's going to affect the market. What are the trends?
Oh, the crystal ball moment.
Well, it's crystal ball. Oh. Yeah, Mystic Tom, and you can pick stuff that feels topical and relevant, or just stuff that you're geeking out on and super interesting for you.
Oh, you wouldn't want to go. Some weird stuff I geek out on. We talked about AI, right?
I've heard of that.
Right. So we talked about that already, but like the only thing I'd say on that is just how much quicker. Go and listen to the AI experts, go and listen to the podcasts, go and read the books, etc., etc. Although the books are usually out of date by the time.
By the time.
And use them yourself. I was chatting to a group of people very senior in the market recently who should remain nameless.
Yeah.
And they were all sort of opining on how AI is going to change their life. And then I did a quick poll and asked them if I open your phones now, how many times do I see an AI model on your personal phone? You're not allowed to use it at work or whatever. Sure. And the answer was 0. Not one of them had Claude or Perplexity or ChatGPT downloaded on the phone. I thought, well, there's your answer, guys. Come on. There's better people to talk to about me, but the pace and the ability of these tools and the ease in which they can change plumbing is so impressive, and so adopting and embracing that and understanding that has got to be right at the top of the list on that sort of stuff. In terms of risk, we talked about increasing volatility in the world, which is increasing movement of people, is increasing from climate-related stress, is increasing because the current geopolitical world is becoming less hegemonic, and therefore there's more potential points of conflict around the world. The data, the rise of data, we saw some very interesting presentations from a few companies now that are finally unpicking that supply chain issue of tracking where the things are in the world, which finally seems to be something that insurers have been worried about and clients have definitely been worried about for decades. Yeah. And now the data that's available for that is starting to unpick that in a much more sophisticated and insurable way, because you can only insure it if you can sort of vaguely understand it. So those are interesting things. The transition economies and how the complexities around changing client needs as their businesses become, particularly in the energy market, become more complicated, but also the associated businesses around that. For example, if you're a data center now, you're not just thinking about your data center, you're thinking about where you get your energy from now, and the solutions that you need to grapple with around that are becoming more complicated. And I think as an industry, us and a lot of other companies are working hard on how we give our customers the sort of products that they need to manage their risk better on that kind of thing, and that's quite complicated. The industry is, in general, especially on bigger risks, been very focused on the line of business rather than the customer. I think
Yeah.
there needs to be a shift more around to the customer and less on the line of business. But how do you bring in expertise and get them all to work together very nicely to produce that perfect end user experience is difficult. It's a really difficult question. I don't know, have you seen any other new emerging risks outside of stuff that we've already talked about? You know, we created Keter, we work with Keter, we work with Unmiller, we work with those sort of companies. These have been some of the big problems that we've been grappling as new risk frontiers.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think, where do you start and where do you end? I think it kind of relates to your business, and it seems like you've done a good job of bringing some new and emerging risks to the market.
What's exciting us at the moment? Exciting and scaring, I guess.
Well, that was going to be my counterpoint. Actually, is like the stuff that keeps you awake at night, and
from an emerging risk perspective, I think trying to get your head around that complex interplay of generally increasing volatility, and how that then pops up into your insurance landscape, and where does your existing offerings not work for the people that it used to work for. That's something that needs really careful thought. And
is it easy to predict, or
no,
is it
it's really,
up?
really hard to predict. And to some extent, if you could predict it, then it probably wouldn't be something we're talking about, right?
Sure,
but I mean, just take climate change, which is so well understood, massive topic, but so well understood. Like from the work our CAT research team does, we think we know fairly well now about what's going to happen, let's say, North Atlantic basin storms. We know how they're going to change in frequency and size and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
But there's so many, 99% of the rest of the world, which isn't affected by North Atlantic hurricanes, we're much less sure about what does it mean, more flooding, less flooding? Does it mean, we know there's more energy and volatility in the system.
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily always equate
to.
So there could be a very different relationship, and then much, much more research needs to be done on that, and therefore resilience for our clients, but then also how we deal with that as a risk within our organisation as well, right? Because we write a lot of CAT risk, so we need to get our heads around that. That's an interesting area. And what tends to happen is, understandably, is the place where all the values are is a place that's studied the most, but it doesn't mean that other parts of the world are not worth studying and understanding more. And the thing that's quite exciting about that, I guess, is that because it's becoming easier to work with the data that is available, because the processing is getting more automatic, machine learning, all of that kind of stuff, I'd hope to see that you don't necessarily need a team of 20 academics to understand what's happening in these areas as much as you did in the past. So that's kind of pricing, and that's exciting, and that probably means that we're able to help our clients more in those areas that perhaps they didn't understand and we didn't understand so well.
I like it. A nice way to round out conversation.
Anything else?
Doing good for the planet, doing good for.
What's exciting you about Vegas next week?
Getting to talk to people about what we found out from these studies. I think the big one for me, the event is it's a massive one. So it's a combination of different businesses, old friends. Maybe there's a
you can't predict yet. You're asking me for predictions. I'm going to string that back to you. You can't predict yet what the big topics of conversation will be next week.
I can and I can't. I think the structure of the event into kind of villages and topics gives you an idea of what are the prominent conversations, because they're often they're led by discussions within the industry. If I relate it back to last year, like AI was just everywhere, and it was really difficult to differentiate between offerings. And I think as insurers, reinsurers' abilities and capabilities to use these technologies and bring them into their business and their experience in doing so, what I hope that will translate into people being forced to be more specific about what their specific solution can do, and in relation to why it's better than others.
And that's going to be really interesting, right? Because the amount of money and valuation and frothiness in that industry eventually has to result in, genuine usefulness to people. And
well, you'd hope so. Whether it does,
no, there'll be a ton of stuff that isn't useful, and then there'll be a ton of stuff that is useful, right?
Yeah.
Someone said to me two weeks ago that the AI landscape is not going to look like the tech giants landscape. You're going to be less monopolistic in this area. You are going to have big companies that dominate this sort of stuff. There's going to be a lot more of them, just because the nature of the way that this technology will work will favour concentration less than perhaps the. I don't know if that's right or not, but it was an interesting. Interesting thought.
I don't have a crisp answer to it. I think you're right. I mean, there's giants who've got more money than small
Everyone
countries, right? Pouring it all into R&D and the enabling technology and infrastructure. But yeah, within an insurance context, you've also got deep expertise, people coming out of insurance and setting up businesses. And I think that's really interesting, is how can you combine that deep subject matter expertise with the enabling technology and build stuff that's amazing and really quickly. The scalability and the commercialization of that, jury's out, but we've definitely seen.
And that speed thing is,
absolutely.
It's fascinating. It's wonderful to see.
It really is, and we recognise it in our own business as well, and we see it around us constantly.
Am I allowed to do a plug?
Of course you can.
Well, then next week, go and speak to our miller and talk to them about what's happening, because they're at the cutting edge of the AI industry, but also AI insurance, and get their thoughts on this sort of stuff.
Yeah, they're going to be in town, aren't they?
To talk to. Yeah, they'll be in town for sure.
Great. Tom, thank you.
Brilliant.
It's been a pleasure, as always.
As always.
Thank you very much.
Fantastic.
Great.